Melbourne-based Tom Nethersole has released several infectious pop songs and performed them at festivals such as Midsumma's Pride Street Party, Rockhampton River Festival, and Always Live. And he now has a country pop song, the truly lovely Ardmona Rd, which I'm sure you will love as much as I do. And I'm going to talk to him about it. Hi, Tom.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very pleased to be talking to you because obviously because you've been a pop artist, you haven't crossed my radar before, but now you are in the country music tent, so to speak. So,
I'm
um,
glad that I ventured into your wheelhouse.
look, so am I. It is your first foray into country music, as I said, but you grew up in the country. Whereabouts?
I did. I grew up like just outside of Shepparton. My friend always makes fun of me for saying that I grew up just outside of Shepparton because I really should just be saying I grew up in Shepparton. I once said to like someone who was from France that I grew up just outside of Shepparton, and they're like, they don't know where that is. Like, you can just, you don't have to be so specific.
But
But
in
yeah, I grew up
Australia,
in
you can be,
exactly.
Yeah.
I misread it that one time, but yeah, in regional Victoria is where I grew up.
Okay, so your whole childhood was there?
Yeah, until I was about 19 and moved to Melbourne, I spent my entire childhood in there. I can hear my housemate who would say that about me laughing at me right now. That I've
Oh,
brought that up.
there they. So, growing up in the country, it's no guarantee you grew up listening to country music. So, what did you grow up listening to?
Honestly, like a lot of the music that was on SingStar, I remember singing like all the songs that were on the PlayStation SingStar, like the Skater Boy by Avril Lavigne, the What About Me by Shannon Knoll, those kind of songs, some Scar by Missy Higgins. But yeah, I feel like one of my first memories of listening to music was my brother and I putting on Eskimo Joe's Black Fingernails Red Wine, which is not the kind of music that I make now, but I remember like just like dancing on the tables with him in our little country town. So yeah, that was very beautiful.
Look, What About Me by Shannon Knoll could be called a gateway drug to country music because Knowlesy did move into country. So,
Some people are calling it that, and yeah, we're looking into some rehab for that.
it's also like Shannon Knoll has a big voice. I remember, 'cause I've been around for a while, when he was on Australian Idol at the time. It was that very first year of Australian Idol. Guy Sebastian
Hmm.
won that year, and the Australian Conservatorium of Music in Sydney was asked to rate the four singers before this is before Cosima dropped out. So Paul Levy
Wow.
as well, rate the four singers on their range, and Shannon Knoll, according to them, had the best range out of all four.
Wow. Even more than like Guy Sebastian. Was it just based
Yes.
on range or was it based
Yeah,
on like agility or
I think, well, overall, but that they did. I remember them mentioning the range because I would have thought Guy.
yeah.
But so, when you sing, so like, this is a roundabout way of saying that if you're singing Shannon Knoll on SingStar, it's quite a lot.
Well, let's hope that it's translated and developed my voice.
Yeah. So how did you develop as a singer? Was it just that you were singing along to a lot of things and you thought, yeah, I like singing, or did you go to lessons? Were you in a band at school?
I actually originally got into singing because my sisters did like musical theater and my mum seeing me sing all like What About Me to my friends and family on repeat was like, oh, like let's get him into doing musical theater as well. So I started doing productions and that was kind of my introduction to performing, I guess, in a musical capacity. And then yeah, in high school I started singing lessons. I was in vocal groups and stuff like that, and it just kind of developed until I started doing my own solo stuff and turning my own experiences that I was going through into songs.
So I imagine with a background in musical theatre, you're probably pretty relaxed on stage because obviously that is like over and over and over again. An audience is there. There are so many moving parts. Things can go wrong. So I would
Yeah,
think that it kind of makes you less nervous in a way.
a little bit. I think it's also a little bit different going from performing in musical theatre to performing my own stuff because I think sometimes in musical theatre you can hide behind a character, whereas with when you're your own artist identity or brand or whatever, like you're putting yourself out there in a way that is much more vulnerable than I guess musical theatre was for me. So I think that's something that new that's been fun to develop and learn.
Yeah. So when did you start writing and recording your own music?
I mean, like properly, probably like year nine in like 2019. I remember like when I was like 8 years old or something, I would go to my dad's laptop and start writing songs on like a Word document, and that was like my first introduction to it. But yeah, properly like sitting down with the guitar and like writing out full songs was about year nine, and then I remember I would like download the 90-day Ableton trials with like the music software and just like use all these different email addresses so I could keep downloading them and working on my songs and stuff like that. So
Right.
yeah, that was kind of the start of that.
So if you were playing guitar by year nine, when did you begin?
Well, I started playing guitar in year seven, and then year nine was probably like the year that I started developing more of like my own songwriting and stuff like that. Yeah, I remember one of the first songs that like I properly wrote was actually for a short film I was making at the time, and I think like part of that was me hiding behind a character and like writing from their perspective. And I think like I was used to coming at music from that perspective of from a character as opposed to from my own experience. So I think from year nine to now has been a journey of like increasingly becoming more and more vulnerable with music, which I think is like shown itself in more of my recent work and especially with Ardmona Rd and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's a big decision to make, right? If you're used to having characters to play, it can be very scary to start saying, okay, well, this is actually what I believe in and who I am and what I want, I think is a big part of it too.
Yeah, I think like it's easy to hide behind any scrutiny that you get and say like, oh, well, that was the character or that was the show, or like as if you didn't have much agency or autonomy in that. And I think, yeah, there's a vulnerability and you're kind of opening yourself up for criticism when you're purely putting your skills, your stories, and your everything out there to be scrutinized, I guess.
So when you started writing your own material and performing it, releasing it, was pop the logical genre? By that stage, were you like, yes, this is what my voice is for, this is the songs, this is the style I like to sing in?
I think so. I think I had always been really scared of coming at music and being put into a box of like, especially growing up queer in like regional Victoria, I was very scared of being put into a box of like, oh, this is just like queer commercial pop music and it doesn't have much substance. And I think as someone who has always kind of approached writing, whether it's like music or other kinds of mediums, I've always approached it with being like very vulnerable and having like stories at the crux of it. So I
Mhm.
think I was very worried of being, put into a niche or something like that. But yeah, whether it's pop or whether it's like elements of folk or country, I think that the main thing is just like telling stories. And if pop is the best medium for a certain song, or if it's something else for another song, that's kind of how I approach it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have released several singles, and one of the 2023 releases was Meant to Be Alone. And accompanying that release was a QR code campaign that was aimed at mental health support. And you are, in fact, a mental health advocate. So has that been part of your artistry from the start?
I mean, I guess so. The first song that I released, Build a Bear, was about my mum passing away and like being left as like being a child growing up without that parental figure. So I think that like for my very first release, it's been kind of a focus on that. And I think I find it hard to release music that doesn't really have like a crux of vulnerability or a crux of like honesty in it.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think whether inadvertently, like whether it was consciously or not, I think like mental health has really been at the crux of I mean me as an artist, but also just me in my personal life of trying to undo some of the things that have been, pushed upon us or things that have inadvertently happened to us.
Yeah, well, losing your mum at a young age, and you're still a young man, so I imagine you were quite young. That can shape your entire life.
Yeah, I think, well, yeah, kind of how we're talking about being like put into a box. I think that was another thing where I was always just scared of being put into a box. And I think like losing my mum when I was 8 years old was another one of those things where it's like I'm really resisting the idea of being put into the box or being the boy that lost his mum at a young age. I think, especially in like a small town, I think we all have those families that were like, oh, that's the family whose parents got divorced when we were 4 years old, and like that's who they are for the 40 years that we know them. If that makes sense, like it's crazy how those kind of things can define a person, and I was very scared of that.
Yeah, and I guess it's as an artist as well. It's working out what you're developing in reaction to other things, so that you're not that, but also and therefore trying to find who you are authentically and tell stories about that. It's actually quite a balance, I think.
Yeah. I mean, how do you feel with like writing your pieces and stuff like that? Like, how do you blend like reacting to things versus like introducing your own personal life into
Well, look, Tom, I haven't actually turned the question ever on myself, which is
it?
very
I'm
to
sorry to do it to you though, but no,
And
like
it's
I'm
because
interested.
I write books as well, and I have to
Oh
tell you
wow.
that I think some things are definitely in reaction to not necessarily how the world may perceive, but more in just in reaction to how I perceive things are happening in the world, not necessarily to me, but to other people. But then as an author, yeah, the more books that go on, the easier it is to actually find that identity and stick to it. But I think also, but just in writing about music, yeah, for sure. When I started writing about music, I was definitely, I think, reacting to an idea of who I thought a music journo should be. And
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah,
eventually
100%.
one gains confidence and just goes, oh, I'm just going to write it the way I want to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's so true. I definitely feel that. Yeah.
Yes. So thank you. That's actually the first time anyone's put me on the spot
Of
to
course. Thank you for sharing. Like that was very interesting.
um, and I think it's yeah, and it is an ongoing balance, I think, because as you put more and more work out into the world and your audience grows, more people have more opinions, right? So then it's working out what you're reacting to in terms of other people's opinions and then what is actually you.
Yeah, it's like deciding what is like the most honest and truthful way for you to like talk about yourself or convey your emotions.
Yeah. And you are an independent artist, which does help, I think, because you don't necessarily have other people telling you what sort of music you should put out.
That's
And
true.
also, as an independent artist, you've had to build your own momentum and you have done that successfully. But there aren't a lot of guidelines for that. I know there are probably tips and tricks and there are probably YouTube videos and things like that, but it's not like there's a necessarily a handbook that says
No.
how you do it. So how did you start and how have you continued to build that profile?
I mean, I feel like it's like multiple ways. I think one of the ways that I did it was incorporating my music into these TikToks that I was making. I was doing these skits pretending I was a celebrity, and when it would be like me impersonating a musician who's up on stage, I kind of transitioned from it me like lip syncing to a Billie Eilish song to me lip syncing my own songs, or like
Right.
having that being part of the skit. And I think that was one way that I found like transitioning from being like this creator on TikTok or whatever to
Mhm.
then incorporate it into the thing that like I really, really cared about. And in other ways, it was about like putting on shows that, you know, brought together the people that I find really interesting or the people who resonate with my music. And I think like keeping a bit of intrigue and scarcity to that, which I think was something strategic that like my manager and I have um, tried to do or like work towards and had in mind of like there are musicians who gig every single week and that is their thing and that works so well for them and they're so successful. I have so many friends who do that. And then I think there's also some artists who rarely perform and like that makes it such a big deal and there's like such big hype for people to go to those shows. So I think it's been like bridging the gap between consistency and scarcity and just like trying to keep people interested is like the biggest thing that all of us are trying to do and like have people care about what we're putting out.
Yeah, and just when at a time when discoverability is at its hardest, really. But you mentioned then just putting together shows. So obviously you have somewhat of an entrepreneurial mindset, I would think. You're doing that.
I think so. I mean, when I was like in year eight, I started my own production company, like filming weddings and stuff like that. So I think that's where that like entrepreneurial side of it comes in and like trying to think of like how people are thinking and marketing things to be not only engaging but like effective and stuff like that. I think there's a part of me that like finds that really intriguing. I think like it links back to the music of like what makes people think certain ways or why do we feel certain ways about certain things? Why do we gravitate towards certain music or certain words or certain people in our lives? I find
Mhm.
that really, really interesting.
Yeah, it is. And it's also interesting how it can change throughout time. Like, for
Yeah,
example, I used
100%.
to be a country music snob. I didn't like it. So now
Whoa, that's so interesting.
yeah. So I think it's definitely the sorts of songs, possibly more than the genre, it's the sorts of songs that can appeal to a person in a moment. And also, and I'm really interested in the fact also that you are interested in visual identity because I think for artists these days that's such a huge part of that discoverability piece, getting noticed. It's having some kind of presence, being aware of brands. So at what age did you start to develop, or what stage rather of your career did you start to develop an interest in that?
In visuals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, my background is honestly in like directing and filmmaking and stuff like that. Like, I was honestly like my mum put like had me in commercials and stuff when I was very young. So I think like there's a part of me that always has been aware of like how I can have been promoted or used to promote products and stuff like that, which
Okay.
feels like very weird. And it feels like an episode of Dance Moms when I say it like that, and it wasn't like that at all. Um, but yeah, there's like a part of me that has always thought about I know how to create a visual or a story and stuff like that, whether it's for a short film or whether it's through music and I don't know what feels right. I think it comes very naturally to me and like it's something I'm passionate about. So yeah, I think if you can always follow what you're excited about, whether it goes well or not, you've succeeded.
So when for songs for which you've made videos, have you conceptualized that video at the time you're either writing or recording that song?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, I Yeah, usually I'll have an idea of like, oh, and this is what the music video could be when I'm writing it. But sometimes it comes like 6 months later, and sometimes like with Ardmona Rd, this was the first time that I'd worked with someone else to create the visuals for the music video. So that
Okay.
was kind of me letting go of that power. And I think there was a part of me that was worried about, oh, if I have this background in like filmmaking and editing, I don't want to step on anyone's toes and I want to hand over that power. But I also want to be able to like bring in what I've learned to, try and create a balance of, creative independence.
Yeah, so let's talk about Ardmona Rd, which is your latest release. It is country folk pop. Well, it's pop with country and folk influences. The country stamp is put on it from the start of the
The
song.
pedal steel at the start. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's part of the evolution of country music in this country and overseas as well. But just what's coming out here. I think it's really cool because it's not this heavy hand of, oh, I'm going to make sure that this country sort of stamped all over a pop song. It's
Mhm.
actually this seamless weaving of elements in so that it really suits the song. I'm curious, when you wrote the song though, did you think it would be a country music song?
I'm gonna be 100% honest right now. No, like when I went into this session, I honestly had the concept of it being somewhat of like a pop upbeat song. I think there
Mhm.
was an inkling within me that was like, this could be a really beautiful, like stripped back kind of ballad song of like, I'll take you home and like this blossoming of a relationship. But I think it was honestly a really smart decision in the room with Geordie, Raria, and myself to be like, let's veer it more into this upbeat country kind of element where the sincerity is within the lyrics and what's being
Mhm.
said, and the production kind of keeps that warmth and that thickness.
Yeah. It's a really sweet love song. Yeah. Like the chorus is, so yeah, I'll take you home to Ardmona Road, playing cards with my sister, helping dad in the kitchen, I think is how it goes. I mean, that's gorgeous. And then you said it's deeply personal, but also relatable, especially for queer listeners who are searching for that fairy tale moment we don't always see reflected in music. So that made me wonder whether you'd actually written the song that you wish you could have heard yourself.
100%. I mean, it's also the story that I hope to live one day of
Ah.
taking that person back home. And I think that there's a part of this song that is somewhat of like a manifestation for the love that I hope that I can feel for someone one day, and to have them slot into my life in that beautiful way. I think that would be really beautiful.
Yeah. So what was the initial spark for it? Was it something around the chorus, or was it just like one little element?
The initial spark for the song was I had that main tagline of "I'll take you home to Ardmona Road" and that kind of melody, and I kind of sat on it for weeks, and then going into this session with Raria and Jodie Thomas, I was like, this is I have this tagline and I feel like it'd be really sweet to write a song about taking the person you love home for the first time and having them become part of the family. And those little moments of leaving the room and you come back and the person that you love is like joking with your family even though they've just met for the first time, and they're like smiling at you and just like reassuring you, and just I don't know, that all that worry was misdirected and misguided.
So you mentioned Geordie Thomas and Raria. Have you worked with them much before?
That was the first time we ever worked together. Geordie and I both met Raria on the day. It was the first session that Geordie and I had ever done together. I think we'd only met one other time when he came to like a show of mine. So yeah, we hadn't ever really worked together, hadn't really even met before. So I think it's crazy that we created such like a vulnerable song and just like meshed so well, which I guess like helped in the ideas of someone meshing into a family, that the three of us just blended so well together and like completely clicked.
Yeah. So how did you come to work with them there? That was the first time.
I know that Rari and I had been talking about doing a session for a while, and it just was not working out with our scheduling. We're like, well, hey, I'm not available that date. Let's move it to this. Like, should we organize to do it with some producer? This producer's not available. We could do it on Zoom with this producer who's in New Zealand. And it was just like, why isn't this working out? And then we were finally like, oh, like I want to do a session with Geordie, like we've been talking about doing one for a while. The three of us, let's catch up and do one. I think that's just how it ended up being. And they are both such like vibrant and sweet, kind of joyful, radiant people that
Mm.
it felt like that infused itself within the song, and it was kind of like in the room, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it really has infused into the song. It is just such a lovely love song, like a lovely hopeful love song, and the video really reflects that as well. There's a very carefree sense to it, and also the use of light in it for that sort of the idea of the day trip to the beach and then the fading light. And you said that you handed over the reins for this. Were you at all involved at all in the storyboarding of it or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I had the original concept of like us being, I really wanted the shot of like me and the person that I love in the tray of the ute, like going through the countryside. This song felt like there was wind rushing through, my hair and stuff like that. And yeah, I loved the idea of being on like a road trip with friends and that kind of idea. And then it was working with Cole Surrey, who's like an emerging artist in Melbourne, um, with, I guess, like, yeah, handing over the reins to let him incorporate what he envisioned for it. But I think we were both very aligned on what the video was, and I was very grateful that it felt like the story and the song was the main focus, and there wasn't like ego around like, oh, this is the artist brand and this is like my directorial style. It was just like, well, this is what's needed for the song, so we're obviously not going to steer it in this direction.
Yeah. Even though summer is over. It's like
Summer is over.
anyone who wants to hang on to summer should look at that video.
Grip it tight, yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, that's what it was like, even though we didn't have so are you a writer? Because you were saying, you had the idea for this song when you went to the studio. Are you a writer who tends to collect songs and wait for that time in the studio to decide what you're going to work on, or actually do you tend to write knowing you have studio time coming up?
I mean, I don't really have studio time that much. I usually write a lot of my songs solo, just like at the guitar, at the piano, or with production that I'm doing myself. So, like, that was one of the times where I was like, oh, I'm like having to prep for a writing session in a studio I've never been to with people I've never been to. So yeah, I usually will write the songs myself, and maybe I'll have like, I have this list on my phone of phrases like, better the devil you know than the devil you don't. Like, it, just like phrases like that. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't like force it to drink. Like little phrases and like little things like that that I collate, and like little lines like, I'll take you home to Ardmona Road. Yeah, my phone is so full of storage from voice notes and stuff like that that it's like vocal melody 3894 that I'll take into a session and be like, oh, this melody could work for this thing. So yeah, I'll either have a full song or I'll go in with some certain ideas, but I usually try and be prepared and have like 3 or 4 song ideas to work on.
So given that you have a voice that's perfectly suited to pop music and you have a background in musical theatre, have you had to adapt your voice since those musical theatre days?
A little bit. I mean, like I remember my singing teacher teaching me how to sing for musical theatre, and then when I started singing more like pop songs or like had an audition that was more pop song adjacent, she was like, you're not opening your mouth, like what is going on, like use the techniques I've taught you to use. So I think that was the adjustment of like, oh, but then if I sing like that, it sounds too musical theatery, and it just doesn't sound how I want it to sound. It doesn't sound like a pop star. So yeah, that was the journey of trying to change that.
So now that you have, as I said, come under the country music umbrella, do you have further plans? But given this song wasn't even going to be country music, maybe you don't know yet. The whole country career waiting for you, Tom.
Look, that's up to the people. No, I'm kidding. There's definitely some songs that I have written that I wouldn't say a country, but they have a bit more of like a folk influence, and I think that kind of indie pop folk sound is very much suited to my voice and the music that I like to listen to, as well as like the stories that I like to tell and that I want to tell. I think that kind of sound and those sonics is very much suited to, the kind of intimate and vulnerable, honest storytelling that I want to put into my music.
Yeah. Well, we'll still let you come to Tamworth, even if it's folk. It's
Thank you
fine.
so much. I would love to come.
So given that you do play festivals quite a bit, well, I suppose we're heading out of festival season because we're going into the colder months. So looking ahead towards the springtime, I suppose is when they come back up. Do you have any festivals planned?
Right now, I don't think there's any locked in. I would love to say that there are, but no, I don't think that there's any locked in that I can share. I think like a dream for me one day would be to perform on like the laneway stage or something like that. I think that would be such a cool opportunity, and I would love for that to be the case. Or even something like the one night stand with Triple J, like that would be really, really cool.
Okay. And when you perform, because you play piano as well, you mentioned, so do you tend to play solo with either of those instruments, or a little bit of piano?
A little bit. Like I like can play it well enough to like write songs on it, but like I'm not gonna call myself a piano player, because every piano player is gonna be like, no, you can't. But yeah, I'm usually playing with like production tracks that I've built out, like pre to the shows, you know, with any backing vocals and stuff like that. And then yeah, sometimes I'll bring up a guitar. But I think like in the past, a lot of my songs have like been songs that I'll be dancing to. So it's
Right.
usually not a case of me pulling out the guitar unless it's really a intimate kind of song.
Yeah. So I did ask about whether future releases would be country music, which was
More
very
folk, yeah.
presumptuous of me. But do you have other releases in the works?
100%. Yeah, this year is probably going to be like the year with the most releases that I've ever done in a calendar year. So it's really exciting. You can hear the stress in my voice. It's taking a toll on me. But no, I'm really, really excited about the music that's coming out this year. And there's another release on the way, which is very exciting and yeah, is more of that folk kind of acoustic sounds, which I think is much more suited to the music that I like to create.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to hear that, particularly because if it's more acoustic, then there's more of your voice in it, presumably. I was going to say something else then, and I can't.
Hopefully I'll be able to perform
Stress.
it in Tamworth.
Yeah, you were talking about the stress of releases, but I was thinking as you were saying that about you being an independent artist, because of course it's not just, oh, I need to get the timing right. It's also, I need to find the funds for this.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Right now I'm like working 4 jobs to make sure that I can do this. So it's yeah, it's just a matter of like finding the resources to fund the project, but also then you having no time to put into it. So like I guess that is the struggle of every independent artist, but we're all dealing with that. And like I am so blessed to be like able to do this. So and for people to listen, like there's so many people who would be doing this and maybe don't have the same listenership. So I feel very grateful for like the small amount of people who do listen to me. That's so lucky.
And I know that Melbourne was your nearest biggest town, growing up in Shepparton, it has some great country music artists. It seems like it's been a great environment for pop as well. But what does that city offer you as an independent artist, but in terms of just support and community and things that can help you?
Oh, I mean, I love it here. Like it's so beautiful. I think like the community that's here as well as like the opportunities is so beautiful. And it kind of feels like me and my other music friends, we're kind of creating a really strong music industry in the next wave of emerging artists. And I guess trying to build the Australian music industry to be on the global stage in a way that I feel like it hasn't been for however long. Like I think we've had our exports out there who have gone to America or gone to the UK and have made it and come back. But I think like I'm really excited to see what the next 10 years of music in Australia looks like and what's, you know, my friends and I are able to do in terms of being part of that wave of people who are building it up from the ground.
I love that mission statement.
Oh, thank you. I got really, really passionate.
But also, the thing with Australian artists in all sorts of media, like whether it's books or music or film or whatever, we've had the cultural cringe for so long, and the tall poppy syndrome, and the combination, as I like to say, is not a good one, because it's meant that Australian artists tend to say, oh no, either I don't deserve to have success, or I'm going to get shellacked for having success. And so I love hearing you as a young artist basically saying, no, like we want to build this industry and we want it to be great.
I think I'm just like really sick of people who are trying, like there's this whole thing on TikTok right now of people who are trying so hard to be like very casual and like unbothered and stuff like that. And it's like, no, it's like so cool to try and have a passion and like be ambitious and stuff like that. Like that is what it's interesting. Like I think I am someone who is sometimes drawn or has been in the past drawn to people who have this nonchalance and like this carefree attitude. And I think like the more that I've interacted with people like that, I'm like, oh, there's nothing behind this. Like this is really like boring and dull. And like I'm drawn to the people who have just like this energy and excitement and like zest for life and who have like that kind of vision. I think that's so exciting. And those are the people who we should be praising, uplifting, not the people who are, I wanted to swear them, but who are like putting down other people, like you were saying with Tall Poppy. Like, yeah, that's not something that's desirable or something to be admiring. I think the people who are trying is so amazing.
I completely agree. Love to hear it, or as the kids say, I love to see it.
Yes, Sophie. Yes. That was really good.
So yeah, look, I think it's a great note to end on actually, because this is the mission statement, as I said, and it's fantastic. So I can't wait to find out what you do next. In the meantime, we have Ardmona Rd, which I love as a song and as a video. So I hope people go out and listen and watch. Tom, thank you so much for your time. It was great to
Thank
talk.
you so much, Sophie. I appreciate it.